Welcome back, my friend. I'm so excited that you're here because have you ever seen your desired outcomes really come to life? And have you ever planned these things that you want to achieve, but somehow you kind of get derailed? I want to tell you that my guest today is the person that is number one, takes you back to basics, and he uses visualization and humor in his teachings to help you reach that vision. He's a keynote speaker, and let's jump into the interview with Steve Gamlin.
Thank you so much, Julie. Great to be here, and I'm definitely looking forward to this conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, so here's the deal. I know that people just heard you say hello. I know, but did you work in radio?
The funny part is I did. I was in the radio industry for 10 years, but here's the
Uh-huh.
part that most people laugh at and they think I'm lying. I wasn't actually an on-air DJ until my 8th year because I did not have this voice and I had zero confidence and I was really good behind the scenes, but I was deathly afraid to actually be on the air as a DJ. So
Wow.
I wish they say, "Oh, you got a radio voice." And I say,
Mhm,
it's a darn shame I didn't have it when I was on the radio, but
mhm.
thank you. I appreciate that.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I always love speaking to people that have different backgrounds, right? Because that's what makes the world go around. Now, I saw something about you, and I want to know more about
Mhm.
this. What is humor coaching?
Yeah, humor coach is something I love to do, and I used to do
Okay.
it for free. And
Okay.
this it goes back to my work in radio as a
Hmm.
comedy writer, 7 years of stand-up comedy. One of the things that a lot of speakers struggle with, keynote speakers, professional
Yeah.
speakers, is how to use humor
Mm.
appropriately
Yeah.
and effectively. So I've actually carved out one of the pillars under my business
Hmm.
is helping speakers to craft humor and deliver humor appropriately
Hmm.
and to find the funny in their presentation. So
Yeah.
that's one of the hats I get to wear, and I love it
Mm.
to
That's
see
so
somebody
good.
take it
Yeah.
and go get a they'll call me back and go, "Oh my god, Steve, you were right. Pause an extra second, wait for the laughter, and oh my gosh, it worked. It was gold."
Ooh, that's a
I
good
I I
advice. That's good
love
advice.
I love that. I love getting to be a part of seeing other people succeed.
Well, you and I are definitely aligned. Helping individuals succeed is something that definitely drives me. I love being able to know that the person with a dream can actually make it come to fruition. And I I will say I love comedy and I would like to believe that I am funny. But now that you're saying this, I don't know if I'm waiting a minute for people to laugh. I think I just go right over and keep going. How
Well,
do I
that is the
remember?
style. It's
Oh, okay.
it's how I used to be at first when I started in
Okay.
Toastmasters, when I first started being a
Uh-huh.
speaker.
Yep.
And, I started stand-up comedy at exactly the same time as
Mm.
speaking. And I was in a competition in Boston, a comedy competition, and somebody asked me how I did. I said, "Well, let's put it this way. I got through 5 minutes of material in 3 because I didn't pause for any of that pesky laughter and applause that usually gets in the way."
Yeah. I think this is the thing that when we are speakers, we have this content, we have this thing that we want to get out. And sometimes it just gets ahead of us. And really, we have to remember that it's not about us telling the story, but it's about the people receiving the information that we're sharing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And we have to give them time to absorb it, and we
Mhm.
forget that it's not
Yeah.
just the people right in front of us, it's the
Hmm.
back corners. It takes a little bit of time to get into the shadows.
Hmm.
And sometimes a pause can be the most genius thing you do. And I
Hmm.
learned that. And as soon as I got the timing down, oh, we're off to the races because you invite people to be a part of it
Yeah.
when you and that applies to speaking or comedy or
Yeah.
even in coaching.
And coaching, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very fun. You've had a journey, and I'd love for you to kind of unpack a little bit of how you went from, and what was there something in between, Steve, from being in that radio career to now you being known as the motivational firewood guy. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, what was in the middle, and I've got a couple of birthday candles on you, is, if you remember the cartoon Wile E. Coyote and the
Of
Roadrunner?
course,
Okay.
my dad's favorite, by the way.
Well, then
Yeah.
I love that because that was my favorite too when I was a
Okay.
kid. I was on the radio in the industry for 10 years. I also had
Mhm.
a DJ business that I started on the weekends because radio is
Oh,
notorious for not paying any money.
yes.
I worked 6 or 7 days a week for 10
Wow.
years and burnt myself right into the ground.
Yeah.
And in a very short window of time, I walked away from my radio career without any plan at all, other than my little $11,000 a year DJ business.
Mhm.
Also went through a divorce. My first marriage
Mhm.
ended after 7 years, and I was
Okay.
tens of thousands of dollars in debt,
Wow.
and it just crumbled. I mean,
Mhm.
nobody to blame but me. I jumped out of the plane and figured
Mhm.
out I didn't have a parachute halfway down, so I wound up moving back in, living with family.
Mhm.
And that was the early 2000s. And in
Okay.
August of '03, in a very, very self-deprecating and self-loathing and self-torturing frame of mind, because I destroyed my life, I had $3 left in my pocket on a Friday afternoon. It was very hot and
Mhm.
humid up here in New Hampshire.
Mhm.
And I decided to take out my frustrations on a bucket of golf balls at a local mini golf place that had a driving range.
Okay.
And I went to the farthest tee box on the property so I wouldn't dent anybody's car because I'm a horrible golfer.
Yeah, so you and I both.
Yeah. So not only was I up against the safety netting, but I was underneath this row of steel towered power lines.
Okay.
And a thunderstorm started.
The
Rain,
place to
wind,
be.
thunder, lightning. Oh, yeah, the place
Like
to
the
be. So
place to be. Oh my
here I am,
gosh.
barefoot in the wet
Mhm.
grass, under power lines, in a thunderstorm, hitting golf balls, and everybody but me ran from the storm. And at one
Mm.
point, I just held up my club and just looked at the sky and said, "Go ahead, I dare you." Like,
Wow.
I won't take myself off, but if you do it,
Mhm.
oh well.
Oh, wow.
And nothing happened. So I hit my bucket and the buckets of 2 guys that ran from the storm and never came back. So I spent an hour swinging as hard as I could, hitting golf balls.
Mhm.
And when I finished, I got out to my car and the rain stopped and the sun came out. And I just started laughing. And
Wow.
the next day, one of my first calls with a brand new life coach, I was his first client.
Okay.
And he asked, "How was your week?" And I said, "Well, let me tell you what this moron did yesterday." And in less than 5 minutes, I told this story of that hour. It was very self-deprecating, but it was hysterically funny.
Mhm.
And when he
Mhm.
stopped laughing, which is something as a coach you shouldn't do when somebody's life stinks, he
It's
said,
true.
"Have you ever thought of being a motivational speaker or a stand-up comedian? I think you'd be really good at both."
Mm.
What he didn't know is when I was 11, I wanted to be a radio DJ, a stand-up
Okay.
comedian, an author of my own books, and a teacher of people. He didn't know
Wow.
that.
Check, check, check.
And I had already been on the radio, and my first book was almost ready to come out. So these were the last
Mhm.
2. I said,
Wow.
"Yeah, but I have no idea how to pursue it or if I'm even good enough." And he said, "Well, on my desk in the junk mail pile, there's a brochure for a local community college. I just looked at it. They have an intro
Mm.
to stand-up comedy class that starts in 2 weeks. Will you go?"
Wow.
I said, "Yeah." And then he asked, "Have you ever heard of Toastmasters?" And I said,
Mhm.
"Kinda." He said, "There's a chapter a town away from you that's one of the most successful around and one of the most
Mm.
talented. I think you should go." Did stand-up
Mhm.
for 7 years, was in Toastmasters for 8, and this summer is celebrating 20 years since my first speaking event.
Wow. You've been around the block, Steve, and I love that, kind of, um, and I can see this is how or kind of the direction that you landed with what you do today, because you, as a young child, had this vision, will we call it, of things that you wanted to do. And I think that for so many of us, right, we have a picture and the world happens and somehow that picture gets lost. I'm finding a lot of women in particular, and I was there at one point. I kind of woke up and I'm like, what am I doing? Is this joyful? Is this what I wanted? Oh my gosh, this is so far away from being what I wanted. And I think that we we deviate. Um, how do people and how do you help individuals sort of connect with the vision, the goals that they have for their life?
It takes a lot of quieting the
Mhm.
noise, and one of the
Mm,
first things I tell people, I said, "Look, go find somewhere quiet you can sit for even 30 minutes or even an hour if you
mhm,
can, and go somewhere where people don't know you. Leave all things electronic that will buzz, beep, vibrate, or otherwise distract you in the car or at home,
mhm.
and
Even better.
sit there with a pen and paper and start to think about the things in your life maybe you wanted to do or be or have at some point in
Mhm.
your life that really excited you, but maybe you got away from it. First question is ask yourself, do I really still want that? Does that
Yeah.
still fire me up? And it
Mhm.
doesn't mean you throw your life in the dumpster like I did and go pursue something else. I mean, I had
Right,
no
right.
plan. I just was falling apart. So let's see if there's a way to even tap into that a little bit.
Mhm.
And then think about where your life is now. And I work with a life wheel, pretty standard tool in personal
Mhm.
development.
Yep.
Just give yourself a rating from 1 to 10 in your physical health,
Mhm.
your emotional well-being, your closest relationships, the
Yeah.
core values. Are you operating in accordance with what you truly believe? Your
Mhm.
faith, which is very similar, your connection with people, and
Yeah.
your work and your just
Mm.
evaluate where those are now, and then start to think, where would you like each one to be in a year? And don't you dare write 10 for all of them.
No, you
How would you like
can't.
to improve it? In 1 year, where would you like it to
No.
be?
Yeah.
That's
That
where I start with people, and
yeah.
I start to hear the stories. And one of my earliest coaching conversations was with a woman at the time in her mid to late 30s, which is the
Mhm.
sweet spot for people wondering,
Right.
am I doing this? And she's an accountant, and she was working 60 plus hours a week, burning out. She said, I want to chuck it all and go work with disabled children,
Hmm.
but I can't. She said, I can't
Yeah, she
because
can. Right.
money wise, she could never earn what she was earning, and she
Yeah.
needed the money. And so I asked her, I said, how badly do you want to do that? She goes, I would love to do that. And I said, okay, why don't you research some nonprofits in your community and
Mhm.
see if any of them have events you could go volunteer for?
Yeah.
2 weeks later, she sent me a picture of her with a group of children,
Mhm. Okay.
special needs kids, at a bowling alley,
Fun.
having the time of their lives. And she said, I'll work 65 plus hours a week if I get to do this on a Saturday morning at least once a month.
That's awesome.
So it was just getting a flavor, getting the what I
Yeah.
call the slivers of
Mhm.
time.
Mhm.
Just just put that back into the recipe, into the mix, and you have
Yeah.
no idea what that could do for you.
I agree. I think sometimes our society says we got to do either or, but I'd love to believe that there's room for yes and, right? And we just need to reimagine what it could be like. And sometimes we need someone to be able to help us with that. I love that you do the Wheel of Life. It's a very powerful exercise. And if you don't know what it is, my friends, you can either send the message to Steve or I, and we'll send you one.
Perfect.
But
Exactly.
it's a great exercise, and I have to tell you, um, as a perfectionist, high achiever, type A personality, when I do the Wheel of Life, a lot of times, I'm picturing my Wheel of Life right now.
Mhm.
There's areas where my wheel is not a wheel; it's like kind of discombobulated.
Yeah.
Um, how do we motivate ourselves to kind of and again, I think, well, I believe that our our areas of life, we need to prioritize them, and that's kind of what happens. And a lot of people don't understand in what rank these areas of life are to us, and yet we're trying to act in a different way, right? Like we say, spiritual health is important, but we never go to church, right? So I think that that's where people go wrong. But if spiritual health is, let's say, something that's important to you, or community, being in the community, it's important to you, and like me, you're like, oh my God, it's going to take so long to go do that. How do I do that? How did we motivate ourselves to move forward?
The first thing, and I love that you also use the wheel, is because
Mhm.
the phrase I keep hearing, and I can't believe I'm still hearing this all the time. I need work-life balance.
I hate that.
Work is
Yeah.
one,
Hmm.
life is comprised of 7 others, but yet people
Hmm.
lump it in as though it's 50-50. So I
Yeah.
love that
Never.
you have however many spokes
Hmm.
on your wheel as well, because there's so many
Yeah.
versions out there.
Hmm.
Here's the thing I tell people. I said, look, there are, the way I teach it, these 8 areas. They're all
Hmm.
operating 24/7. And here's the cool part, because people freak out. They go, oh my gosh, I got to set goals for all these. How about if I just do one at a time?
Mm.
They're all so interconnected
Mhm.
that when you go to improve one, it actually increases
Yeah.
the odds that you're going to find success in the others,
Mhm.
because it's not going to, and a big thing about visualization to me, it's not
Mhm.
what you get necessarily, it's who you become.
Yes.
And if
Ooh.
you choose, and this is what worked for me, and this is the story I share with everybody. Say you choose to take better care of your physical health.
Mhm.
You exercise a bit, maybe you reduce some of the things that might not be contributing to your health, you get better sleep, and you drink more water, and you eat better food. Okay.
Mhm.
So you sleep better at night. You wake when you sleep better, you wake up more focused with better energy. When you do that and you go to work, you can work more
Mhm.
efficiently and your focus is good. When you do that, you can potentially earn more money. When you earn more money, you can buy back a little time, take a little vacation, or have special time with the people closest to you. And if you do all of your business dealings in alignment with your core values, meaning you never have
Mhm.
to look over your shoulder or wonder what you said to somebody,
Yeah.
and also your spiritual values, which they're basically the same, but one comes from a different direction,
Mhm.
you're going to experience better emotional rewards all the time, and your connection with people is going to be better. So, because you
Mhm.
took care of your physical health, you just
Yeah.
impacted all seven other
Yeah.
areas of your life. That's the thing that I stress to people right on
Mhm.
when we
Yeah.
start. Little
Yeah.
shifts.
I love
And
it.
yep.
As a tiny habits coach, little shifts, you're speaking my language. And I think
Yeah.
that again, we think we got to go big or go home, but the reality is that it, our habits, and we talk about this a lot in the Tiny Habits Academy, that our habits are like plants. You put the seed in the ground and you start to water it. And yes, there's a lot of other things, like the weather that, have an impact. But the reality is that if you are really being consistent with watering your plant, you're going to have something that kind of grows up and around and becomes bigger. But it's so key to know that you're not necessarily getting something, like you said, you're
Mhm.
becoming.
Yeah.
Who did you become in the process of being a coach?
I became a much better listener to people. I became, and I am by definition, and I've heard this from people who are, I am an empath and I'm very
Mm.
impacted by energy around me, whether or not I can see it or even be aware of it.
Mhm.
And I also learned to be very careful with that. That if somebody I'm coaching is in a very difficult place, for me to not sink down to that level, but do my best to reach a hand out and help them elevate a bit.
Mm.
I tell them they shouldn't feel that way,
Yeah.
but start to offer suggestions. It's kind of like when you see right after a thunderstorm, it's all the dark
Mhm.
clouds still in the sky.
Yeah.
But then that little tiny crack happens and that little ray of light comes through. As a coach, I learned very quickly that is what I need to be, is to just be
Yeah.
that light no matter what's going on,
Yeah.
to understand and to allow them to feel their feelings, but show them a potential way they could alter their gaze a little bit and
Mhm.
what they're looking at.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest things, and then people started to say, "Oh my gosh, you're the greatest cheerleader ever." I'm like, "Well, I don't have the legs for it, but
Oh.
I appreciate the compliment." I am
I love it.
forever cheering my clients on, and if I sense, if I feel, if I
Mhm.
see them on social media and I just get this feeling that there's some bad energy there, I won't
Mm.
comment or like or anything on that, but I'll come down here to the recording studio, get on camera, and just coincidentally
Oh my
shoot the
gosh.
video message and drop it in their DMs, and what I always hear
You
is,
and I are
"How
very
did you
alike.
know?" Yeah.
Now my clients know that this is my modus operandum.
I love doing it. I feel
Yeah.
like I'm a kid at Halloween that's,
Yeah.
it's not a flaming bag of dog poop, it's actually something good. I'm leaving a flaming bag of hope on
Mhm.
somebody's porch and running away
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
though I knew nothing about it. I love being able to just drop into somebody's life and hopefully
Mhm.
pivot them a couple degrees and have them see that ray of light coming through.
And it doesn't have to be a big pivot sometimes. Sometimes we just need that reminder, like,
Yeah.
"Ooh, I'm having a bad day, but you know what? You are healthy today," or something that reminds you and really centers you. Many of us are, again, it's human nature. We're so programmed to focus on the empty glass or the part where we're not moving as fast as we want to. And that's how, yeah, I see it with entrepreneurs. This is how they end up really spiraling because, oh, I didn't do this, and oh, then I don't show up, and then they fall further behind, and then, oh, maybe I'm not cut out with this. Oh, you know what? Maybe I'm going to go do that because that's new and exciting, and the stuff that I was doing, I wasn't doing great, so I'm going to drop it. But the reality is that every time you're pausing and going, you're ending up not moving anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In this instant gratification, squirrel
Mhm.
brain society,
Mhm.
I see that happen all the time, and,
Yeah.
and I'm a person, believe me, I'm squirrel all the way. I have been my entire life,
Mhm.
which has helped me in a lot of ways, but then I surround myself with coaches and mentors to keep me on track now.
Yeah.
So I see the signs of it, and I've got a digital clock on
Mhm.
my, uh, desk upstairs in my
Mhm.
office, digital kitchen clock, and I just tell myself for 20 minutes at a time. I do EFT tapping, and I say, "For
Ooh.
20 minutes at a time, I'm
Mhm.
gonna focus on this one task."
Yeah.
And when the distractions come up, which literally sometimes are squirrels because we have 2 new bird feeders in our backyard. So
Oh, fun.
I pulled the shades down. I'm like, "Don't even look at the squirrels.
Yeah.
Write the article, do
Yeah.
this, do the video, record a podcast, set
Mhm.
up this meeting, write this new stage story,"
Yeah.
whatever. I
Yeah.
now eh, I just focus even 20
Mhm.
minutes at a time, and I become very productive
I
when I
believe
do that.
that we can do anything for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. And by the way, I use an app, well, it's a Chrome extension called Momentum.
Mhm.
And when I open the pretty screen, it actually allows me to set my 20-minute increments. And then it has a little alarm that says, hey, your 20 minutes are done. Go take a
Nice.
walk or stand up or whatever. And I like that a lot because, yeah, it's so easy to talk ourselves out of the thing because we think it's going to be long and boring. And I'm not sure where to start. If we just start, we can get momentum.
Yeah, and I also listen to the Calm app. I have it on my phone. We got
Oh,
a
yeah, me
great
too.
deal on it this year, and I think it's
Yeah.
short for calmtheheckdown.com, but they just couldn't get that URL.
Yeah,
But
right.
I love it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
really do because the music and the messaging is so targeted scientifically. I'm not a
Mhm.
scientific guy. I'm a
Yeah.
hippie in this world, hippie-minded, but I
Mhm.
love that it works because it was
Yeah.
designed by people who knew that. That's why doing what I do, people go, "Oh, it's
Mhm.
all very woo-woo." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm blue collar woo." I know what's going on behind the curtain. I'm not even gonna explain to you what's happening at a cellular level, but we're gonna roll up
Mm.
our sleeves. I've got these tools I've developed because it worked for
Mhm.
me.
Right.
That's what I'll teach you. Just do this and watch what happens.
Mhm.
So I try to unwoo everything I do. In the Calm app, I know that it's touching my brain in the right way. I
Mhm.
don't care.
Yeah.
I care that I get the results.
Yeah, I think that a lot of times we don't realize, right, that there are so many different resources that we can leverage. And this is why I love that you're that cheerleader for your clients. And as a coach, really, that's one of the most important things that we do. You know what I call it here in the podcast? And I'm not taking credit for this. And people who listen to the podcast often know what I'm going to say. Those are what we call believing mirrors. Sometimes we don't
Ooh,
see the greatness in us, and we need someone to reflect that and believe in us and borrow that belief so that we ourselves can do the thing that someone else believes we can. And
I
I,
love
I
that.
love being able to remind or just reflect to someone like, hey, you're so talented, you're so smart, you can do this and help them in that direction. And by the way, coaches need coaches, and that's why we also surround ourselves with other people who are like-minded and maybe a few steps ahead of us so that we can get those believing mirrors for ourselves.
Yeah. I love to actually do a smaller version of that in addition to
Okay.
my clients
Mhm.
with strangers. The
Ooh,
grocery store is my favorite place
okay.
to have those moments. I may see somebody walking around and
Mhm.
they may not have a smile on their face or they may be, looking a little anxious or nervous or whatever. And I'll just look at them and I'll say, that is the coolest hat I've seen anybody wearing today. I couldn't
Mm,
pull that off myself, but you
yeah,
rock it. And I just wanted to let you know.
that's awesome. Yeah.
And they look at me like I'm a weird guy, but then I'll see them a couple aisles later and they
Mhm.
smile again and point at me. And I just smile and point back. And I'm like,
Yeah.
ripples,
Yeah.
a
It's a
degree.
ripple. Yeah.
Yeah, my mission
Oh.
is to just leave a trail of plus signs behind me
Mhm.
everywhere I go every day, which includes this conversation. And the
I
best
see
part
that.
is I own the factory. I'm never gonna run out of plus signs.
Oh, I think that everybody has a plus sign factory. We just need to maybe take out the cobwebs and open it up and start to produce those plus signs. And how amazing wouldn't it be for creating this incredible ripple effect with people that sometimes really are in that moment? And I know that, there's times, by the way, that people have had these moments with me. And I hear, hey, just what you needed to hear. And yeah, it's so good. It's so good. Um, I want to ask you about vision boards.
Mhm.
I'm a fan.
Awesome.
You are, again, the vision guy. I want you to talk a little bit more about, do you do vision boards with your clients? What is the vision board for people who maybe don't know? And does it work?
Like anything else, it works if you work it and if you
Mhm.
understand the mechanics of it. To me, and the coolest definition I've ever come up with that really resonated with my clients and my attendees, a vision board is a wall-mounted GPS for the rest and the best of your life.
Wow, that's good.
It's not,
Um,
so many people go, "Steve, I made a vision board, my first
mhm.
one ever." And I go, "Okay, send me the picture." And I already
Yeah.
know what's on it.
Mhm. Yeah.
Lamborghini, a yacht, a mansion, a private jet, a helicopter, a big honking gold watch, and a bank vault full of gold bars and pallets of cash. And I always say, "All right, I'm gonna disclaim this right up front. There's not a single thing wrong with any of these." They
Mhm.
go, "Okay." I go, "But it's a glorified letter to Santa Claus. Where are
Ooh,
you in this?" And
yeah.
then I introduce them to the life wheel. I say, "Okay, this is fine. This is money and material
Mhm.
things, and that's great. What give me one goal for each of these other areas of your life." And all of a
Mhm.
sudden they start to realize, "Oh,
Yeah.
this is how I get there." And understand who I need to
Mhm.
become and who I need to
Mhm.
surround myself with and education that I might need to get and alignments,
Mhm.
collaborations, and coaching and all of that.
Mhm.
And what it is, it's a story for your entire life that you wish to be living and
Mm.
enjoying. And a big part
Yeah.
of it is who you become, not just what you get. Like I said, nothing wrong with any of those things.
Yeah. Nothing wrong.
And it works if you work it. You need to understand
Mhm.
that unlike The Secret, now I liked a lot of things about The Secret. The
Mhm.
DVD version came out in the early 2000s. It was
Yep,
one of
I
my
have it.
first. I still have it
I
somewhere.
still have it.
What I didn't appreciate or didn't think they
Mhm.
did properly, they had a genie in a magic lamp, and all
Yeah.
that genie said throughout was, "Your
Mhm.
wish is my command."
Yeah.
Now, for me, it's not a wish, it's becoming an active participant,
Mhm. Right.
and you need to understand that where you are now, kinda like I said with the first exercise I
Mhm.
do with people, evaluate where you are now, where you wanna be 1 year from now. Don't start with the 20-year thing if you've never done this
No,
before. You're gonna
no,
scare
you
the heck out
can't.
of yourself.
Mhm.
Think of it like an old wooden roller coaster. I love old roller coasters.
Mhm.
You start off at the parking lot level. Any one of your goals is at the top of that first hill.
Mm.
You can't start halfway up. You can't skip any steps. You have to get in. You have to surround yourself with the right people because those don't hold a lot of people.
Mm.
And then you go click, click,
Click.
click,
Yeah.
click
Oh, what a
all
great
the way.
analogy.
And when you've taken enough steps, and every once in a while, I want you to look over your shoulder and realize how far you've come. Because most people
Mhm.
don't think well, I don't feel
Yeah.
like I've accomplished anything. I'm not any closer.
Yeah.
When you get to the top and you look over,
Mhm.
and your
Yeah.
lungs fill up and your eyes get really big, and all of a sudden you have that moment and it goes over the top for a ride you couldn't stop if you tried.
Mm.
And when
Yeah.
you get to the end, celebrate it, and then set your next level goal or pick
Mhm.
another one from your vision
Yeah.
board, get back in line, and when you do, here's your opportunity to coach. I believe everybody can be a coach. Look
Mhm.
for somebody who's just as scared as you were when you started on your
Yeah.
first ride,
Yeah.
especially if they have a goal similar to what you just
Mhm.
achieved, and say, "Hey, are you setting a goal like this? Yeah. Are you a
Mhm.
little nervous? Yeah. Why don't you come and sit next to me? I want to tell you a story on the way up."
Oh, so good. You
Just
make
keep
me wanna
going.
go to Coney Island and get on that roller coaster.
We've got one here in New Hampshire
You
that's
do?
it's about 100 years old now.
Oh, where is it in New Hampshire?
It's in Southern New Hampshire. I believe it's in the town of Salem. It's called Canopy Lake, and it's an old
Oh,
coaster called the Yankee Cannonball.
okay. I'm gonna write that down. Maybe Dan will take me there.
Yeah. It's a blast. It's right there in the parking lot. You can see it. And one of my keynote stage stories is
Mhm,
the old wooden roller coaster, and there's a picture that I took in June of 2003 before I even became a speaker, even before
mhm,
the golf ball incident. The same exact day, my first wife and I agreed to get a divorce. I'd promised
mhm,
a friend of mine I was gonna come to a chamber event at the amusement park.
mhm.
I was not in the mood to be amused.
Yeah.
I was scraping bottom, and
Mm.
I sat on this roller coaster in the first car, second row, and I looked up at the top of the hill, and for some reason, I took out my ancient flip phone and took a picture of it.
Yep.
A year later, that picture inspired that entire roller coaster lesson.
Mm.
So, right place, right time.
Yeah.
Be aware,
Mm.
opportunity, and it's my most requested stage story.
Really? I love that, and I think that for us who are speakers, right? Having um, this moment every day in which we can say, "Oh, how can this be a moment that I can share with others that they can come along in that ride with me?" So powerful. Many speakers listen to this podcast and or aspiring speakers.
Mhm.
You are a well-established one, and like you said, you have competed in Toastmasters, and you also have an array of, stories. I don't have as much probably as you. I need to learn from you, but where do we start? How do we get ourselves to build that momentum so that we can become the person that is inspiring others and helping them kind of come along for the ride?
The first thing, and I go back to pen and paper, think of all
Mm,
the things you have survived in your life.
mm, yeah.
And somebody asked me one time, Steve, how do you make up all those stories? And I do what I call the puppy head tilt. I tilt my head. I go, really?
Hmm.
Have you not been paying attention the past 20 years? Believe me, I've
Yeah.
gone through in and out of the fire, burnt off all my tail
Mhm.
feathers over and over. My Phoenix rides a pogo stick.
Mm.
Every single time I've gone through something, it's
Mhm.
become a lesson.
Wow.
And, we've got people out there that tell overtold tales like the starfish story and all these other things.
Mhm.
But we are so rich in material just by things that we've gone through and survived in
Yeah.
our own lives. And all we
Mhm.
need to do is document those.
Mhm.
And it becomes almost like a Mad Libs. You
Yeah.
punch in the problem and then you write your story around it.
Mhm.
And if you've gone through it and you have a story of how you were here and then you
Mhm.
fell to here, but then you clawed your way back to here and beyond, that can inspire people.
Mm.
So think of all the things that you've done. One of the things I tell my stories and I have people say, Steve, I could never admit that about myself.
Mhm.
Well, then that may be one of your biggest stumbling blocks because I
Yeah.
am 100% the same person on
Yeah.
stage, off stage, backstage, standing on the street
Yeah.
corner, or walking down the Captain Crunch aisle at the grocery store.
Mm.
Same
That's
guy.
that's a consistent personal brand. And funny you bring this up. We were just talking about this in my mastermind. We meet every week and I have some incredible women. But one of the things that I was sharing with them is that we have to really be aware that if we don't have that authenticity and show up in the same way everywhere, then people know that. And it's not something that they can gain trust with
Mm,
because they're sort of duplicitous, I guess.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, early on, I tried to sound, poetic and
Yeah.
everything with the memes and quotes I'd create. I mean, I've got hundreds of original quotes. And
Mhm.
once in a great while on Facebook, it'll say, "Hey, Steve, 17 years ago, you published this." And I read it and I go, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, what kind of guru riding a unicorn, farting glitter and rainbows across the blue sky is
Mhm.
this?
Mm.
And then I'll read it and I'll say, you know what? I'm not going to bash myself for it because that's where I was at the time.
Mhm.
So anytime I look back at my early stuff, I go, oh my gosh, that's adorable.
Aw.
Look at that.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
if I could print it out, my mom would put macaroni and glitter around the edge and hang it on her fridge. So I went from writing flowery stuff, trying to sound like other people,
Mhm.
to messages like, "Don't let other people fart in your elevator."
Oh,
Meaning, don't let other people wreck your energy, wreck the air
so good.
around you, kick them
Yeah.
out. And my favorite moment
Mhm.
with that quote was somebody took a screenshot and sent it to me and said, "Oh my God, Steve, I was scrolling and I read this and I said, oh my gosh, Steve would love this." And then I scrolled down and realized you wrote it.
You wrote it. Oh my gosh.
And they said, "I
That's
heard your voice actually
so cool.
saying it," which is why I sent it to you. So that, oh my gosh, when you hit your sweet spot like that and
Yeah.
people get you and it's
Mhm.
authentic and it just sweats right out of you,
Yeah.
that's your sweet spot. And when you hit it,
Mm.
keep working it like a muscle.
Yeah, so good. You remind me of a story. I've shared it in the podcast. I'm not going to go into the whole big story, but basically, I was coming home from New York, and I used to do the commute, and I got stuck in traffic, and I was talking to my sister to kind of pass the time, and she doesn't have a lot of patience, and she said, "Why don't you just go eat somewhere?" So I had her Google a place and send me. So I said, "Oh, you know what? No, I don't want to go there. I think I'm going to go for Salvadorian food." And I Googled the place. I went to the place. I got off the highway. And then I was sitting there and I'm like, oh my God, this place is amazing. And then she calls me. She's like, did you get there? I'm like, yes, I got to the place. And it's, oh my God, and the way I forgot what I said. It's a very quaint but yet savory place, and with something, like that. And she's like, that's really funny. Someone did a review of that place just with those words. And then I
Oh.
realized that it was my review from like 3 years prior.
Oh,
Could
I
you
love
believe
that.
consistency?
That I
Yeah,
goosebumped over that, and I
yeah,
do that, boy, when it
yeah,
hits me just right. That see, you
yeah,
were supposed to be there. The Beatles wrote
yeah.
it best in, All You Need Is Love. It
Oh,
says, "There's nowhere you can be that isn't where you're meant to be. It's
mm,
easy. All you need is love."
yeah,
So in that moment, that's where you were.
yeah, absolutely. You are, again, you do coaching one to one in groups, you are speaking. How do people leverage your expertise?
They go way back to basics, and they
Okay.
usually reach out in a DM,
Okay.
or I'll get a call and say, "Hey, Steve, we're having a few people together, and this person
Hmm.
told me I've got to bring you in."
Okay.
It's as simple as that. I would love to say I've got this massive marketing machine behind me, and I will at
Hmm.
some point,
Yeah.
but right now it's mostly word of mouth, and people reach out, and most
Amazing.
things start with a simple conversation.
Love it.
Somebody
I
will
love
say,
it.
"I hear you're the vision guy. I'm struggling with this." "Okay,
Hmm.
let's get on a call." And
Yeah.
then they go, "Well," I go, "It's not a sales call.
Hmm.
I'm never gonna be a guy that's like, 'Rah, rah, rah, buy my stuff.'"
Yeah.
I'm just not. I
Yeah.
if we can have a simple conversation and I can leave you better than I found you, great. If that inspires you to hire me to work with you or
Hmm.
get my vision board mastery program or present to a group of people you care about,
Hmm.
awesome. But I just want to add
Amazing.
value in the moment, and that's where it's all been for the past
Hmm.
20 years, virtually all word of mouth.
Well, I think that the listeners today have gotten so much value from this conversation. You are a fun guest. You have to be one of these people that come back again and again because you inspire and you're also doing some very cool stuff in the world. Um, I always tell my listeners that listening is great, implementing is better. So I want to really encourage and challenge the listeners that they should take something from this. Maybe you do the wheel of life. Maybe you think of a story. Maybe you start to go to the yes and as opposed to the but, and come up with something that you can implement in your life and kind of plant it into your life and start to grow a beautiful, beautiful tree. I am so grateful. Make sure that you, when you start implementing, reach out to Steve and tell him, hey, I heard you say this, and this is how it's affected my life. This is going to be a really great conversation. We're going to have all of your information on the show notes. Anything else that maybe I didn't connect or bring up in the conversation, Steve?
Just one final tip I'll leave, and
Yeah.
we've kind of touched on it so many times. If you leave at least one situation per day better than you found it, you're gonna
Hmm.
be doing pretty well, and I learned that by observing one of my grandfathers. He never actually said the words. He
Mm,
just did it,
he
and
just did
now
it.
I do it, and for people that say, "I can't afford it," go rescue a shopping cart at a store that's been left behind without judgment
Yes.
of why it's there. I call it shopping cart rodeo. My record is
Mm.
6 because I have long arms.
Oh.
Go do that, or if you see somebody putting their last bag from their carriage into their
Hmm.
car, especially if they're maybe a senior or they've got kids in the car,
Hmm.
from a safe distance, ask, "Excuse me, would you like me to return that for you?"
Yeah, that's
10
nice.
years of doing that, no one's ever said no. Matter of fact, I did it earlier today.
Yeah, I love that. I think that the little things are sometimes the things that we don't pay attention to, but those are the things that really are incredible and really
Plus
help us.
signs.
Amazing. Thank you, Steve, so much. We have all of his information in the show notes. Please make sure that you connect with Steve, give him some social currency, love his stuff, follow him, DM him, but not to sell him, just to tell him how wonderful he is. Thank you, Steve. You're incredible. And my friends, don't forget, as always, go confidently in the direction of your dreams.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Casa de Confidence podcast with Julie DeLucca-Collins. Remember to check her out on Instagram and Facebook, and always click subscribe to catch every new episode. Remember, leave a review so we can continue to bring you fresh content. And as always, go confidently in the direction of your dreams.